What a rush. Travis Thomas here with my main man, Keagan Stiefel, who's at his humble abode, not here in studio with me this time. Keegs, what's up, man? I miss your face next to me, man.
It's unfortunate, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Schedule switch around, you know what I'm saying? We're here. We're here to talk some football, anything for the people.
No doubt about it, brother. All right, let's get it started. ESPN ranked its top safeties in the league. I'm going to go 1 through 10 here and get your thoughts. Kyle Duggar did make the list. I just wonder, should he have been higher? Should he have been lower? We'll start with number 1. Antoine Winfield Jr. for the Bucs was number 1. From the Ravens, Kyle Hamilton 2. Jesse Bates III from the Falcons, ironically, was number 3. Steelers, Minkah Fitzpatrick at 4. Dolphins, Javon Holland at 5. Cardinals, Budda Baker, best name on this list, clearly, my man Budda, at 6. 7, the Chargers was Derwin James Jr. And then, looky, Keegs, at 8, Kyle Duggar. Number 9 is Hufanga with the 49ers. And then 10 is Xavier McKinney. So what are your thoughts initially as I read you those top 10 safeties in the game?
I mean, first thought is he the only Patriot that made any of these lists so far? I know they're still rolling it out, but not a good showing so far if you've been keeping up with the ESPN top 10 lists. And in terms of the broad scheme of the safeties thing, my first thought was from 4 through 10, they're all kind of interchangeable. You know what I mean? That top 3, those are the guys.
Yep.
But once you get down to Minkah Fitzpatrick, it's really what you're looking for, right? Like, that's a ball hawk safety kind of guy. Javon Holland's a similar player. Derwin James and Kyle Duggar are in the box safeties. Budda Baker's like an outside coverage guy, so it's really what your preferences are.
Yeah.
And we'll get into Duggar a little bit, but I definitely think you could bump him up a few spots depending on what you're looking for out of the safety.
Okay. I actually completely agree with you, except I expanded it from 5 down. You know, I throw Minkah in that top. So the way I look at this, again, just to review, Antoine Winfield Jr. from the Bucs 1, Kyle Hamilton from the Ravens 2, Jesse Bates III from the Falcons 3, Minkah Fitzpatrick 4th of the Steelers. I think those are the top dogs, all 4 of them, including Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's the only difference between me and you. You put Minkah in that next grouping. I put him in that top grouping. And, in fact, I think out of that 4, you could swap them any way you want. For example, I am probably the biggest Kyle Hamilton fan there is outside of Baltimore. I remember going back to the draft when he was coming out of Notre Dame. I thought he was the best defensive player available, to be quite honest with you. I thought you could make that case for that at that time. And, you know, he's an absolute stud. He's lived up to all the hype. So I'm a fan of his going all the way back to college. And I think he's number 1 on my personal list. And I also am very obviously high on Minkah Fitzpatrick as well. So for the top 4, I agree with the names. I think you could probably play with the order, but I don't have any issues with the order even that ESPN did, to be honest with you, even though I would change it a bit. As far as Duggar, I think, and let's get into it here, Keegs, because I think when you're talking about Kyle Duggar, I see a well-rounded game. I see an available player who doesn't have, he played the full season. And, you know, they say the best ability is availability. I think that's part of it. He's available. He's dependable. He's really good overall, well-rounded safety. I wouldn't call him great in any particular thing. I would call him high-end at everything. Does that make sense? I think it's a big reason why all those things I mentioned, being very good at everything, well-rounded, not being injury-prone, being dependable, being available. I think this is why he got the bag. When he got his extension, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. Like he's a safe investment to me, Keegs.
Right. No, I agree on that. I mean, I'm a guy who, going back to rookie year Kyle Duggar, if you go back that far, the 2020 season, his second game they started him, which I think anybody who around here, you know, rookies don't really start no matter what your role is, but they started him. And in the first 4 snaps, he played slot corner, deep safety, in the box, and then he rushed off the edge on 4 straight snaps as a rookie in his second game. So I think right away you knew kind of the player he's capable of being. And I think the reason he's not higher on these lists is maybe because of the counting stats. You know, he's got a ton of tackles because he's playing in the box a lot, but the turnovers aren't what they probably could be if he was playing in a different system, because the Patriots, as we saw with Devin McCourty and Rodney Harrison, going back to those guys, it's the last line of defense. So you're really, a lot of what you're doing is picking up the pieces for everybody else, and you're not really able to make plays. But we know if they need a play to be made, who's going to be the guy to do it on the defense? It's Kyle Duggar. I think one guy who could have snuck his way onto this list, just looking at Xavier McKinney at number 10, is Jabril Peppers really all that far off from Xavier McKinney?
No.
Completely different players, right? Like, Xavier McKinney is going to be 20 yards from the line of scrimmage, and he's kind of covering everything. He's the last line of defense, like I mentioned earlier. But Jabril Peppers, if you want a guy on your team, and if you've been down at these practices with the leadership qualities and stuff like that, they're obviously not taking that into account. But from what I've seen, obviously I'm closer to it than maybe the guys at ESPN are, but I'd take that guy over about 95% of the safeties in the league. No question.
He's also very versatile, which I as you said, I think matters big time. I agree with you, by the way, on Duggar. He could have been higher on the list, but I also, in a weird way, don't have a problem with him at 8. You know, I mean, who are you? When you kind of look at the list, yes, conceivably, I feel like Duggar could be higher, but then I start looking at the names, and I don't really know who I'm moving down. Like, I told you, I like Budda Baker. I'm a Derwin James guy. You can move them up, and I wouldn't have a problem. But the issue, particularly when it comes to Derwin James, who I love, is injuries. And so, again,
right.
You know, I think some of this is Duggar is healthy and available and dependable, and that does have to count for something. But you make a great point about Jabril Peppers. He could also be on this as well. I'm telling you, Keegs, I really believe, barring injury, that this Patriots defense, and I'm giving Gerard Mayo benefit of the doubt here. I know he's a rookie head coach, but damn it, man, you're a defensive mind. You're a Belichick disciple. Like, your defense should, if nothing else, remain what they were last season. I thought Belichick did an excellent job with that defense because they were absolutely decimated by injuries. So if they're healthy and Gerard Mayo can just kind of keep the ship steady, I think the defense could take a leap this season and go from good to elite status. And if that happens, Keegs, you know as well as I do, all of a sudden Kyle Duggar's name does have more, but even though it is respected around the league clearly, but I think if they take that next step as a unit, I think Duggar's name could actually get more buzz and get hotter this season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from what we've heard from Gerard Mayo so far, he's reiterated the point that this is a game plan defense. So they've given money to Kyle Duggar and Christian Barmore, and every week those guys aren't going to pop because they have certain responsibilities that they have to do for the betterment of the overall unit. But with DeMarcus Covington calling plays instead of Steve Belichick, I think he's going to be way more aggressive. I think he's going to want to use these safeties in different ways, bring them up near the line of scrimmage, let them make some plays. We saw it when he was coaching at the Senior Bowl. DeMarcus Covington, you couldn't blitz in the game, but during practice that week, he was throwing everything and anything at the offensive lineman. Like, he likes to get after, you know what I mean? And what he talked about when he first got promoted was, we're coming after you. We're not playing defense. We're playing offense on defense. We're going to come get the football. We're going to give the offense as many opportunities as possible to score. And I believe him. And I think with the bodies they have, with Gerard Mayo, who was – alongside Bill Belichick, he was the main game planner for the defense. He wasn't calling plays, but he was putting in week by week. He was putting in the system. So I think they've got everything they need. The watchful eye above, he's not there anymore, and I'm sure, not a doubt in my mind, he was making tweaks that were changing things completely for that defense. But I think they're most of the way there right now, and it's going to take some time. Obviously, there are going to be some bumps along the way, but like you said, even if they're not right to where they were, they can be right below it. And with the aggressiveness of DeMarcus Covington, they might even be able to take a step.
Yeah, I would hope so, and that's why I'm trying to give Gerard Mayo some benefit of the doubt too, as a rookie head coach, but a defensive-minded one, a former player who still feels like he's fresh out of playing in my mind, and then obviously the Belichick aspect of it. Let's talk about number one, Antoine Winfield Jr. I mean, look, I just told you my bromance for Kyle Hamilton, and I would have him number one, but I got to put some respect on Antoine Winfield Jr.'s name too. I remember his dad. His dad was an absolute stud. His dad was a corner, but great cover guy, was also very physical. And I mean, his son is a chip off the old block. He's we talk about well-rounded as well. He can do it all. And what I really love about him, he's got that dog mentality. He's really a rough rider the way he plays the game. He kind of plays the game old school in that way. So I don't want to make it seem like I don't like Antoine Winfield Jr. because him being number one, again, as I said, him, Hamilton, Bates, and Minkah Fitzpatrick are all interchangeable to me. And if you told me any one of those dudes were number one on this list, although I have a personal preference for Kyle Hamilton, I would not have a problem with it. So seeing Winfield Jr. number one is not shocking. It's not some revelation to me because that kid's a stud. You say what to that?
I mean, he's been that way since the day he came out, right?
Yeah,
son of a player, 5-star recruit coming out. He went to Minnesota, which you wouldn't think, what's a big recruit going to Minnesota for? But he was the focal point of that defense, right? I think they told him, we're going to bring you in and you're going to be able to do whatever the hell you want. Go make plays. And what can you're telling an 18-year-old, go make plays? He's going to obviously take it. And then since he's gotten to the league, all he's done every year, he posts. He puts up the numbers. He's the focal point of their secondary. They've had a rotation of cornerbacks around him. The Carlton Davises and all these guys that have come in. When they were showing Brady games every week, it was like there was a new corner out there starting for him. And it's because they had that guy in the back end who can fix everything that's going on around him. And I agree with you a little bit about the Hamilton thing. I think Hamilton and Winfield, in terms of the numbers they put up, are very similar. I'll take the guy who's 6'4" and 220. Over the shorter guy, you know what I mean? So I'll also take him above Antoine Winfield, but from what he's done since the day he stepped foot in the league, he's the number one guy. He's done nothing but show that he posts better than anybody else.
Who's your favorite safety of all time? I feel very fortunate, Keegs, because growing up, I had a chance to watch Ronnie Lott, and that dude was unbelievable. I remember Steve Atwater too, but those were those old school safeties that would just knock your head completely off of your shoulders. And obviously football has changed since then, but growing up, that's what safeties were. Safeties were guys that could just knock your block off. And then years later, you saw John Lynch and guys like that in the league. And then I remember, I covered Ed Reed for his damn near entire career in Baltimore. Yeah. So I had a chance to watch who I think's the GOAT safety of all time. I had a chance to watch him up close and personal. And he was more of a combo platter, like the new age safety. He could cover, he could hit, he was a ball hawk, he was cerebral. He had everything. I know Belichick was a big fan of Ed Reed as well. Who's your favorite safety of all time?
When we're talking favorites, it usually comes back to the old school Patriots guys. You grew up in New England and they're winning Super Bowls. You got to be a fan of them.
Yep.
But it's not the guy you might think. Everybody thinks Rodney Harrison. Lawyer Malloy.
Oh.
The definition of cool. Like, no one was cooler than Lawyer Malloy. He had the do-rag going.
Yep.
He had every armband and sleeve you could have back in the mid-'90s. Him and Ty Law.
Yep.
They're on the poster, Law and Lawyer.
Yeah.
Lawyer Malloy was awesome. And I think he was one of those guys where you talk about the new era when Belichick came in and who he leaned on.
Yeah.
He loved Lawyer from when Lawyer Malloy tells a story in one of the Patriots, Super Bowl DVDs or whatever, where he says after they fired Pete Carroll and they were talking about, who they might want to bring in, Robert Kraft brought him in and he immediately said, Bill Belichick, I want that guy. I want him to coach me again because I remember what I played like when he was coaching me. And he's another guy, in the same DVD, he talked about Pittsburgh had their bags packed, ready to go to the Super Bowl in 2001. And he was like, you don't do that to the Patriots. You don't do that to me. I don't know about the rest of these guys, but you don't do that to me. So the definition of cool, he posted for a long time. At the end of his career, he was with that bad Falcons team in 2005.
Yep.
And you know what I mean? He was on those bad teams, but he was the guy. For 12, 13 years, he was awesome. I loved Lawyer Malloy.
Well, look, if you're going to go hometown, I got to go Sean Taylor on my end, rest his soul, because You know, I think nowadays if he were to come into the league now, he'd probably be a linebacker, to be honest with you. He was such a big safety as far as his measurables, and he played that way too. I mean, he goes back to that old school knock your head off your shoulders I was talking about, but he could also cover as well and was a ball hawk. But I mean, just as physical as they were ever invented, quite frankly. So R.I.P. to Sean Taylor. He did it all. All right, let's go to quarterbacks now. So Tyreek Hill was recently asked his top 5 quarterbacks in the league right now. So current, not all time. Tyreek Hill's answer was interesting. So I'll give you that. We'll make fun of him, and then we'll give our own top 5. So here's Cheetah's top 5. The first 2, I was not surprised. I actually thought he might reverse the order of these 2, but I knew in whatever order it would be these 2. He went Patrick Mahomes number 1. I thought he would pander to Tua and go him 1. He went Tua number 2. Then it gets interesting. Number 3, Lamar Jackson. Number 4, Dak Prescott. Number 5, Baker Mayfield. So let's talk about his top 5. Tua doesn't belong in this, but we understand why he picked him, so I'll give him a pass. Mahomes is Mahomes, of course. Lamar, I don't have a problem with. Dak and Baker, come on, dog. Really? I mean, have you been hitting the head that many times, Tyreek? What are we doing? Come on, Keegs.
Like, Dak Prescott is bad enough. Baker Mayfield, come on. The guy was almost out of the league like 2 years ago. What are we talking about? I don't know where he said this. You know, we're talking about it, but I didn't actually see him say it. I've got to imagine that he was looking for headlines. And he got what he wanted, because now we're talking about it. But there is no reason at all to have Baker Mayfield in the top 5 list.
Or Dak.
He's not the top 5 quarterbacks in Florida. I think he might crack it. But if we're talking high school and college kids, you know, he might be outside the top 5. So that's great. And like you said, Dak Prescott's ridiculous, but the Baker Mayfield one is absurd.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Tyreek, I really, listen, he gets hit a lot. So, it could be, some things could be rattled.
Been in the league a long time.
Yeah, he's got a lot of miles there. So give me your top 5 current quarterbacks right now.
Yeah, I've got Mahomes and Jackson, 1 and 2. Okay. Those were his real 1 and 2 because he had to put Tua up there.
Right.
But I'm going to add 3 guys that he didn't have on there. Josh Allen at number 3. Okay. I think he's either the best quarterback in the NFL or like 7. There's no in between with him. He's playing like the best guy on the planet, or he makes those mistakes that lose them games. But I'll take him over anybody but Mahomes and Jackson. Number 4, Joe Burrow. Injuries are starting to catch up to him a little bit. He's had 2 season-ending injuries in 4 years, and you don't love that. But when he's on, he is on. And the number 5 might be a little bit of a shocker, but give me C.J. Stroud. 22 years old. I'll take that kid for the long haul. You know what I mean? Top 5 right now, maybe not. But if we're talking looking forward, I had to throw him in there because he's that dude. He's legit.
I respect that. I actually have Burrow a lot higher on my list. And I hear what you're saying about injuries. But anytime I'm doing these lists and rankings and Mount Rushmores and all this kind of stuff, I always assume health. And now you're right, big picture with Joe Burrow. But in terms of just pure everyone healthy, I got Burrow, too, right behind Mahomes. And the only reason is because he's the only guy out of all these players we're talking about who I've seen literally beat Patrick Mahomes. I mean, stand toe-to-toe and beat him. And until someone else does that, I have Joe Burrow there. I don't give a damn how many times he gets hurt. He's the only guy I've seen stand up to Mahomes and beat him. So I'll go Mahomes 1 because, I mean, at this point, do we even need to have a discussion on Patrick Mahomes? No. Yeah. He's clearly the best, and I think he's the best of his generation. I think he's already proven that, too. So I'll go Mahomes 1, Burrow 2, Lamar 3. I'm with you. And then I'm going to go Josh Allen as well, but I'm going to defend him a little bit here because I heard you say, he's either a world beater or he's throwing the game away. But look, some of this is on the Bills. Like I defend Josh Allen in a lot of ways because ever since he's been there, they have not been able to put a running game around this guy at all, period. He is the running game.
He is their running game. Right.
Yeah. Yep. And now at this stage of his career, he's getting older. You still don't have a running game. And, oh, by the way, now you're losing all your weapons too. So it's just like at some point, Josh Allen, he doesn't have an elite defense now either. They lost a lot of players on that defense this offseason. I think Josh Allen is doing everything he can, and he's playing hero ball. And unfortunately, I don't think he's ever going to get a Super Bowl. I think we're going to look back on Josh Allen and say, man, look at the stats, look at the accolades, look at all this he did. And then we're going to say he didn't win anything because he played in the Mahomes era, and, the Bills didn't help him out. In a lot of ways, I'm starting to really hold the Bengals accountable for the Joe Burrow injuries too. I mean, it's like, sure, he has all these weapons and this genius coach, offensive-minded and all that. You don't have an offensive line for him, and you haven't figured that out since he's been there. So for Allen, I actually defend him a little bit with the mistakes. And then 5 on my list, I hear you with Stroud. I do respect that. I think the most underrated, disrespected player in the league is Jared Goff. For the life of me, going back to L.A., I used to defend this guy with the Rams when he had McVay. Like, no one cared. Like, it's just like this team went to the Super Bowl, and people were like, well, that was in spite of Jared Goff. I'm not by any means saying Jared Goff carried the Rams to the Super Bowl when he was there. That was defense. That was McVay. I understand all that. But I am saying they don't get there without him. He wasn't he wasn't some pedestrian just on, he mattered in that Super Bowl run. They didn't win it, but for the Rams to get there, he had to make plays in key moments in that playoff run, and he did that, and he never got the credit for it. Then they shipped him out, which turned out to be the right move for Matt Stafford, and it worked out for Jared Goff too in Detroit. He's doing great work, but he's doing great work there. He damn near gets back to another Super Bowl. Don't get me started on whose fault that was, Dan Campbell, and he's putting up career numbers. He's still not getting any respect. I don't understand it. The only people respecting this guy are the Lions, who gave him the bag, the Lions fans who love him, and me. No one's giving Jared Goff any props. I am, and I have been for years. I think Jared Goff is a top 5 quarterback in the league, and quite frankly, I think he has been for a few years now, and he's just not. He's still Keegan. He's not getting that love from anyone. Your thoughts on Jared Goff? I know he's not in your top 5, but just your thoughts on him in general.
No, I think he's one of those guys who he does his job. And how many quarterbacks in the NFL can you say that about? Where they consistently go out there and do what they need to do? 10. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So he's in that group for sure. And like you said, I mean, he's elevated. It's not like he's just riding the coattails of these teams.
Right.
The Detroit Lions are supremely talented. Those Rams teams are obviously very talented. But he was making plays to get them to where they ended up going, obviously to a Super Bowl and then back to an NFC championship. So I agree with you that I think he's up there. I'd obviously take, in terms of upside and age, I'd take a few guys over him. Yeah. But he definitely doesn't get the respect he deserves on a national level. I think that's inarguable for somebody, with a wider view. Obviously, Detroit fans love him. You, Detroit Trav, as I like to call you, you love Jared, and I get it. But on a national level, he definitely doesn't get the respect he deserves.
Detroit Trav. That sounds kind of gangster. I was running 8 Mile during Prohibition. I was running the show back in the day. Hey, put the money in the bag. See, I was one of those. Let me ask you about a couple honorable mentions before we move off of this that I have in my top 10, but they couldn't crack the top 5 here. We made fun of them, but Dak Prescott, look, the numbers suggest he probably should be top 5, but we all watch the games. When it matters, especially in the playoffs, big moments, big stages, he just comes up small. And I've said the same thing for Kirk Cousins over the years. Cousins has all the numbers in the world, but when you need him, you got to come through. I remember going back to his time in Washington. There was I don't remember what year this was, Keegs, or what season, but at the end of the season, the Commanders were in a win and you're in scenario against their rivals in the New York Giants. And the Giants at that time stunk. And Kirk Cousins had everything working for him. The offense, the numbers. Washington was favored in the game. I can't remember if that game was in Washington or in New York, but win and you're in. And they went into that game, and Kirk Cousins was atrocious. I mean, he was a mess. And they lost the game. They didn't make the playoffs. And that was the beginning of the end for him in Washington. You know, for years, and they played the franchise tag game. We're not going to give you long term. And then he went on and got paid and made buku bucks. But I never forgot that. And his career since has been that, where he just, for whatever reason, he just can't take you. But so far, I feel the same way with Dak. But Dak, I do think Keegan is a top 10 quarterback in the league. He's in the 10, right? You agree there?
Absolutely. I think Dak, with me, he's just very frustrating to watch because you know what he can do. You know what he's capable of. And it's whether it's a mental lapse or physically, since his ankle injury, he's not the same in terms of running and being a threat with his legs. I think that's what made him so special because it was him and Zeke, and he had the weapons. You know what I mean? And I think it goes back to the same thing with Josh Allen, where maybe their time has passed. Yep. They had a shot to win, and now you see those rosters dwindling because those teams don't have the money because they've given the quarterbacks the big contracts. So they had a chance to win early, and they didn't get to it, and then it all comes crumbling down at once. Josh Allen has an opportunity to propel his team. I think he's that good. But with Dak, you're starting to see it. They're great in the regular season, and then the playoffs come around, and it's like I would take, I'd take 8, 9 other guys over. I'd take Dak Prescott.
So
I agree. It's just frustrating.
Yeah, it is. Imagine how loser Cowboy fans feel.
Right. Poor Sean McGuire, our Nesson.com. It's tough for him.
It is. I love football season, just making fun of Sean. Brock Purdy and Jordan Love were two other ones I thought about, but Purdy, it just feels so system, just like Tua. It feels so system. Yep. And then Jordan Love, I do like a lot. George is higher than him than I am, but I think Jordan Love, you talk about C.J. Stroud. You could make a case Jordan Love should belong in that same conversation, but this is why I left Stroud out of my top 5. And Jordan Love, I need to see it. I need a little bit more from you. Even if you give me one more season of it, then I can talk. Mm-hmm. But until I see it more consistently, I'm not ready to go there yet. But I will acknowledge Jordan Love, talent-wise, could make this list. Top 5 even.
Absolutely.
What about Purdy? Where are you at on him?
Purdy's an interesting guy because I think he's probably better than we say. Like you said, it's a lot of its system. And people will just throw because he's kind of a normal looking dude, you'll think he doesn't have the talent. He's talented. You know what I mean? And he's a great athlete. He can make, now I sound like Belichick talking about quarterbacks he hates, but he can make all the throws. He's a really talented player, but the injury in the first year and then coming back, and it looked like he definitely took a step back from that first kind of superstardom first year.
Yep.
And he could never really get back to where he was. So if he can, if you can show me 3 years of being an above average Pro Bowl level quarterback, you're absolutely in the conversation, but not right now and not with the team that's around him.
That's right. For more on Boston sports and pop culture, check out Boston Has Entered the Chat. You can check it out on the Nesson's YouTube page, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you follow us on all your social media accounts for all of our best content. All right. This really, really gets my goat here, Keeg. So here we go again. Aaron Rodgers running off at the mouth. This time, Rodgers was at the American Century Championships, and he said, quote, "I love Davante Adams. I can't wait to play with him again." What? Garrett Wilson on Adams during the Garrett Wilson Youth Football Camp. This happened in Jersey. He said he was asked about Rodgers' comments. He said, "Yeah, I saw that. I'm excited. I'm with all of it. Anyone we can get into the facility to help this team win games, I'm with it, and he's one of those." What is going on, Keegs? I mean, is this Rodgers guy, between doing shrooms at darkness retreats and maybe running for VP, now he's pandering and posturing to steal Davante Adams out of Vegas and bring him to New York? I mean, what's going on, Keegs?
Aaron Rodgers stinks. He's the worst. He is something else. It was like 2 weeks, right? No one was talking about him for a couple weeks. So he had to go run his mouth.
Right.
And he had to start talking about, I love Davante Adams. I'm going to bring him in. And we went through this last year. And then your ankle exploded. So maybe just go play some football for the first time in 2 years. And people will forget about how obnoxious you've been and how much of a drama queen you are. Like, he loves the attention. That's all he's doing this for. He wants the attention. There's no chance in hell the Raiders are chipping off Davante Adams.
No, right.
And Aaron Rodgers thinks he's some medical miracle and he's going to come out and play until he's 50. I give him 2 more years. He is – every time I hear his name, it goes right over my head and I ignore it because I'm just done with it.
You're giving him more credit than I am. I don't see 2 years at all. I actually think this is a train wreck. I thought that when he signed with the Jets. And, year one, I didn't see injury. I thought he made a mistake going to New York. I thought staying in Green Bay was the play. And the whole reason it didn't work in Green Bay was him. He was a pain in the butt. And he just complained his way out of town. Meanwhile, he was surrounded by these great young wide receivers. And, you let him tell it. It was, it's going to take too long for them to develop and gel. And bro, what are you talking about? And then, he had a great running game. We know Aaron Jones is gone now, but at the time he had Jones. He had a great offensive line. He had Matt LaFleur, who, I didn't know if Matt LaFleur could coach or not until Rodgers left, because I didn't like the way LaFleur inherited Aaron Rodgers. And then everyone made him out to be some genius. And I said, well, let's see what he does when he doesn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback. Well, turns out he can coach, and so respect to him. But Rodgers complained about him the whole way. And he just kind of ran himself out of Green Bay. I felt like he forced their hand. And then he handpicks his roster. He wants to go to New York. And I'm like, bro, you had a great roster, and the NFC is way easier than the AFC, so you're a moron. And then all the darkness retreat stuff and the political stuff, he's just too much. And so I thought year one in New York would be, Tom Brady ate avocado ice cream and slept in a hyperbaric chamber and lost his family for football. That's how much he wanted to age and play at a high level. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is going on acid trips. It's not the same thing. You're not gonna age the same way, right? It's a whole different vibe.
He's dwindling down. He's picking the one thing that is gonna just take all of everything you need to be a professional athlete, and he's like, I don't need it. I'm gonna throw. He stinks. I can't. And like you said, he went from maybe the most stable organization in the NFL to the least stable organization and the biggest dumpster fire there is.
Yes.
And he handpicked it because that's who he is as a person. He needs the drama. So It's perfect for him. I hope he lives a long, healthy life in New York after his, 2.5 years are up.
Bro, I'm watching this. We talked about this. I'm watching this receiver show on Netflix. Davante Adams is about as unhappy as you're going to find in Vegas. I mean, he pretty much single-handedly got Garoppolo and McDaniels up out of there. Not to say they didn't earn it, but he was focal. He was a focal point in that and very vocal in getting that to happen, and admitted as much on the show. He was like, I signed off on that. We had to make changes. But with that being said, the Raiders still didn't go outside of, I do believe, taking the interim tag off of Antonio Pierce was the right move. But outside of that, his quarterbacks are Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. So, I mean, I don't think Davante Adams is going to be happy there in Vegas. And with that being said, even if he tries to force his hand, if the Raiders are smart and you have to trade Davante Adams, you better not send him to New York. You better send him somewhere else. Send him back to the NFC where you don't have to deal with him. The last thing you want to do is put him back with his boy in New York there with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. So to put a bow on this, Keegs, it sounds like we are in lockstep. Neither one of us like Aaron Rodgers at all. Neither one of us believes that Aaron Rodgers is going to have any sort of success here with the Jets. And neither one of us believes that Davante Adams will be traded from Vegas to New York. He could be traded. It sounds like we're both open to it, but he ain't going to New York. Would you say I covered everything there, Keegs?
And Aaron Rodgers stinks. I want to get that on the record again. He's the worst. We can move on after that, but I just had to say it one more time. I need to make sure that no one confuses my stance on Aaron Rodgers. He's obnoxious, and he's a bad person, probably. Continue.
He stinks, and we hate him. All right, now.
That's right.
We're talking quarterbacks here, and we're talking Davante Adams, who plays wide receiver, and we're saying Rodgers and Davante once had a bromance and made all amazing things happen on the field. So let's get into quarterback wide receiver duos. Well, we could say target. We could say quarterback and a target relationship, because spoiler alert, have a couple tight ends on this list. So give me your top three, let's call it quarterback target duos of all time. Who's your top three? You got make it suspenseful for me, Keegs. Go 3-1. Right. Build it up for me.
We're on the same page here. I'm going to start at 3, Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison.
Okay.
That is the golden era for me growing up. Brady was around, obviously, but he never had that guy. And Peyton, I think Marvin Harrison did wonders for Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning did wonders for Marvin Harrison. And they clearly posted incredible numbers together, obviously. 953 catches, 12,766 yards, and 112 touchdowns. That's absurd. I mean, that's insane. Number 2, I'm going back to Brady. And like I said, he never had that receiver, but he had that tight end. So it's Brady and Gronk.
Yep.
Don't have the numbers in front of me, but you're listening to this show, so you obviously watched them. They were absurd across 2 different organizations for 10-plus years, despite injuries, despite age. They did it together, and I think neither one of them would have been as successful as they were during that stretch without each other. And then number 1 might be a little surprising. When I hear about Jerry Rice, the first quarterback I usually think of is Joe Montana. Steve Young and Jerry Rice, there was no one better. I looked up the numbers. They played together longer than Montana and Rice, but 780 catches, 11,462 yards, and 119 touchdowns in 8 years together is absurd. And that's almost double, all of those numbers, almost double what Montana and Rice did together. Obviously, they had more time, but more prolific per game than the other duo were. So I was actually honestly surprised when I looked through this. I had them at 3, and they bumped up to 1 because they were really – that's an insane stretch.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that never even get near those numbers in their career ever. So there's no doubt about that. All right, so, you talked about Marvin Harrison and Peyton Manning. I don't have them on my list, and the numbers bear out that they should be. And I'm a self-admitted hater. I can't stand Peyton Manning, but I will say this. Those 2 were prolific as all get out. I left them off of my list only not because of my hate for Peyton, but also I just remember how great Reggie Wayne was too, and how I remember Edge. I remember Edgerrin James, and I remember Dallas Clark, and I just felt like Peyton Manning had a lot of weapons. Now, Harrison was the biggest beneficiary, but he just had weapons galore. So sometimes it was hard for me to separate Manning and Harrison's greatness because they had so many weapons, which is why I also have Brady and Gronk on my list, because as you alluded to, Brady did not have the weaponry that Peyton Manning did. He had Gronk, and he had a great defense, and he had Julian Edelman, of course, but he had a great defense and the Patriot way, and he was just Tom. He was a zombie. You couldn't kill him off. If you were down in a game, Tom was going to come back, whether the Patriots won or lost. He was going to bring you back and make it interesting in the end. And Brady and Gronk were just about as unstoppable as I've ever seen. Triple coverage didn't matter. He was throwing it up to Gronk, and Gronk was going to get it. So they're my 3. 2, bro, I can't believe you didn't have him on the list. This Mahomes, Kelce, I mean, like at this point, I have Mahomes and Kelce over Brady and Gronk. Now individually, I have Brady higher than Mahomes, and I have Gronk higher than Kelce individually. But as a combo platter, I gotta go Mahomes and Kelce together are greater than Brady and Gronk. I mean, these two, it's unbelievable. And now I know how probably fans outside of here felt watching Brady and Gronk, where it's like you knew he was going to throw to Gronk and you still couldn't stop him. That's how I feel with Mahomes and Kelce. I mean, how
did he get that open?
That's
I think it every time I watch a game. How is he that open?
Bro,
it's crazy.
And it's the opposite of what Peyton Manning had in Indy. Mahomes doesn't have weapons now. I get when he had Tyreek Hill and Kelce and all. He ain't got that now. So it's like, Kelce's all you got. How's he this wide open? Those two are unstoppable. And then number 1 on my list, I went insert QB and Jerry Rice. I don't give a damn who it is. Montana, Young, I don't care. I mean, Rice.
Steve Berline.
It doesn't matter. Honestly, I think Jerry Rice is appropriately admired and like he gets his flowers. But in a weird way, Keegs, I almost feel like he's underrated, though, because all time. Like, his numbers are absurd. They are absurd. He has records that I just don't think will ever be caught, ever. And we're in a passing league, and we still may not see it. So Jerry Rice is the X factor here. And that's not taking anything away from Steve Young or Joe Montana, 2 Hall of Famers, 2 all-time greats. But Jerry Rice, you have him. You and me at quarterback are going to get some records with this guy. Here's before we get out of here, just talking this out, I wrote down 2 honorable mentions. Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates were special. And then here's one. And you growing up here, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Big Ben and Antonio Brown were so bleeping good. I don't understand what they call them, the Killer Bees. It was Le'Veon Bell, right?
Bell, yep.
Big Ben and
Bell,
AB.
Ben and Brown.
Bro, how did that team not get one against the Patriots? You couldn't beat them once and get to the Super Bowl and win a ring. That threesome was so prolific, bro. I don't understand how they didn't get one ring, just one.
That's the thing. I mean, we talked about it earlier, where you have a small window, and I think that's what makes the Mahomes and the Bradys of the world so great, is that they just kept stretching that window open. But a lot of guys, you miss it in 1 or 2 years, and you're done. So I think that's what happened with them. Obviously, they ran up against Brady and Gronk. So I'll take Brady and Gronk over all 3 of those guys any day of the week. So at the end of the day, it's a team sport, but when you got the best 2 players on the field, you're going to be all right.
I know, but even still, Keegs, the Ravens stole. I mean, hell, Flacco got a ring. Yeah. They got a couple, right? They stole a few. It's just weird to me.
Those were the down years.
Oh, well, but again, the Killer Bees were together during the down years, and they couldn't get it done. Yeah. It's one of those, like, what ifs, I guess. I'm not a Steelers fan. I can't imagine how a Steelers fan must feel. You have those 3 at the top of their game. You don't get anything to show for it at all? That's crazy. And, of course, we know Le'Veon Bell and especially Antonio Brown went on to lose their minds later. And Big Ben was really –
it's a hard group to root for.
Yeah,
it's
a
hard group to root for.
Big Ben was always a piece of Shaq, right? But still, I mean, those 3 together, it's mind-boggling to me that they didn't get at least one ring ever. As far as, like, young tandems right now – I mean, listen, bro, I'll be honest. I want to see Christian Watson stay healthy, but I think him and Jordan Love could be cooking with something. I like watching those 2 play. We'll see, obviously, if, I already told you I want to see more from Jordan Love, and the book's still out on Christian Watson. But it seems like those 2 have figured out something, Keeks.
I'm the same way with C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins. You know what I mean? After what we saw in year 1, give me 2, 3, 4 more years of that, and they might find their way on a top 10 top 15 list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could be right. By the way, Nico Collins, I wonder if that growth is stunted now in terms of the combo with him and Stroud with Stephon Diggs being there. Because he will complain his way to getting that ball. For all of our best content of the day, make sure you follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. For Keagan Stiefel, Travis Thomas here in Foxboro Rush. We'll do it again next time. Thanks for watching. Peace.